Anna and her husband Martin had just gone to bed after a long day. They had recently moved into a new house located on a quiet street outside the city. Everything seemed perfect at first: spacious rooms, cozy decor, and, most importantly, complete tranquility around them. It was their first night in the new home, and they eagerly anticipated a restful sleep after the exhausting day of moving. At midnight, Martin woke up to a strange noise. At first, it was a faint scraping sound that they tried to dismiss as the wind rustling outside. However, the noise gradually grew louder and more persistent, resembling a scraping against the window. Martin cautiously got out of bed, trying not to wake Anna. He approached the window and, pulling back the curtain slightly, peered into the darkness. Outside was quiet and dimly lit by moonlight, with shadows stretching across the garden. Despite his efforts to remain calm, he could not shake the feeling that something was amiss. Returning to bed, Martin tried to close his eyes, but the scraping sound persisted and became more distinct. It now seemed as though someone was attempting to open the window. He felt his heart rate quicken and knew he couldn't ignore it any longer. He woke Anna, who was instantly alarmed when she saw the worried look on her husband's face. "Anna, do you hear that? Someone is trying to open the window," Martin whispered. Anna sat up in bed, her face pale with fear. Martin grabbed his phone and quickly called the police. He tried to speak calmly, but his voice was trembling. "Good evening, there's a suspicious scraping noise outside. We think someone is trying to break into our house. Please come as soon as possible." The police arrived within 10 minutes. The flashing lights of their cars illuminated the area around the house, and officers began to inspect the premises. Martin and Anna watched from the window as 2 officers checked the windows and doors, while a third took their statement. "Did you see who it was?" asked one of the officers, examining the window carefully. "No," Martin replied. "We only heard the noise. When I went to the window, there was no one there, just shadows." The officer nodded and said, "We'll check the area. It could have been someone trying to break in but was scared off. We'll keep an eye on the situation." Anna, standing beside Martin, couldn't hide her concern. "Whoever it was, we can't feel safe in our own home. Why would someone do this to us?" The officer responded, "I understand your concern. In cases like this, it's important to check all locks and ensure they are working properly. It might have been an attempt at burglary or just a prank. Either way, we'll monitor the area." After the police left, Anna and Martin tried to regain their sense of normalcy, but the fear lingered. They were on edge, every noise and movement in the house heightening their anxiety. Martin sat by the window, listening intently for any sign of movement, while Anna struggled to calm herself, her nerves frayed. They exchanged worried glances, their fear palpable. As the days passed, the events of that night began to feel like a distant nightmare. However, the residual fear stayed with them. They checked the locks, added additional security measures, and installed security cameras. Life eventually returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the incident left a lasting impression. Anna and Martin learned to appreciate their security and became more aware of their surroundings. Their sense of safety was shaken, and even the simplest sounds began to cause anxiety. They had come to understand that safety in their home could be compromised at any moment, and they had to be vigilant to protect their space. Story 2. When I was still a child, around 7 or 8 years old, my life was full of difficulties. My older brother and I grew up in a troubled family. Our mother raised us alone after our father left and never came back. To support us, Mom worked 2 jobs, including night shifts, and our grandmother came over to watch us during those nights. Our house was small, but it was suitable for the 3 of us. That evening, like many others, Grandma stayed with us while Mom was at work. I remember that night vividly. I was playing with Lego bricks in the living room, making a mess. Grandma, sitting in front of the TV, repeatedly asked me to be quieter. "Alex, please be quiet," she would say, but I was too absorbed in my play. When it was time for bed, Grandma went to the bathroom to prepare for sleep, and I went to my room. At some point, I woke up in the middle of the night and heard strange sounds in the hallway, creaks on the wooden floor that I thought were Grandma going to the bathroom. But the sounds continued and seemed to be moving back and forth, as if someone was pacing in the corridor. Curiosity and fear overcame me. I got out of bed, cautiously opened the door, and peeked into the hallway. What I saw still haunts me. There was a tall, thin, naked woman leaning against the wall, whispering to herself. Her skin was pale and sickly. She had long hair that covered her face, and her head was bowed. When she noticed me, her head snapped around to face me. Her eyes were wild and filled with panic. I felt a cold sweat run down my spine. I screamed and slammed the door shut, pressing my back against it. On the other side, there were pounding sounds and frantic cries. "Jeremy! Jeremy, opened the door, I kept screaming for Grandma, pleading with her to come and help us. Grandma, thankfully, reacted quickly to my screams. She came into the hallway, where she confronted the woman trying to break into my room. Grandma was panicked but managed to hold herself together. She yelled at me to stay away from the door and immediately called the police. While Grandma fought with the woman, I huddled in the corner of my room, trying not to make a sound. The banging on the door and the woman's frantic cries sounded as though the darkness itself was trying to break in. The police arrived swiftly. The woman, still screaming and searching for Jeremy, eventually left our home. The officers searched the apartment and ensured that she no longer posed a threat. After she had gone, we all embraced each other, trying to find comfort and calm. The wait for the police was agonizing, but thanks to Grandma, we remained safe. This incident left a deep mark on our lives. Since then, whenever we talked about that night, Grandma always said it was not just an incident but a real threat. From that point on, she always checked the doors and windows before going to bed. For us, moving out of that house was not just necessary but a life-saving step. We found a new place in a safer area, but the memories of that nightmare stayed with us forever. As time went on, I learned to overcome my fears, but every night when I go to sleep, I sometimes feel like the creaks and whispers start to remind me of that night. I learned to appreciate safety and understand that danger can lurk in the most unexpected places. This experience became an important part of my past and shaped my understanding of the world. The story of that night reminds me that behind outward calm, there can be a real threat. I became more attentive to the world around me and always remember how Grandma showed incredible bravery in the most critical moment. And although I try to forget that night, I know that the memories of it will stay with me forever, reminding me of the importance of safety and awareness of the world around us. Story 3. Catherine and David had recently gone through a difficult divorce, and Catherine found herself alone in the house they once shared. The quiet of the home, once a comforting embrace, now felt like an oppressive weight. Catherine struggled to adjust to the solitude, but she tried to focus on moving forward and rebuilding her life. One chilly evening as she lay in bed, Catherine was jolted awake by a sharp, metallic sound that cut through the silence. It was as if a lock had been violently broken. Heart pounding, she realized the bedroom door was slightly ajar. The dim light from the hallway cast eerie shadows into the room, and through the crack in the door, she could see a dark figure approaching, a figure wearing a hooded sweatshirt. Panic gripped her as she scrambled out of bed. Her mind raced, and she knew she had to act quickly. She picked up her phone, hands trembling, and dialed 911. Her voice shook as she spoke to the dispatcher. "Help. Someone's broken into my house. There's a man in my bedroom. I think he's coming for me." With the phone pressed to her ear, Catherine retreated into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. The sound of her own breath and the pounding of her heart seemed deafening in the small, confined space. She could hear the intruder moving through the house, his footsteps echoing ominously in the hallway. The sound of creaking floorboards grew fainter as he moved further away, but the anxiety of being trapped was overwhelming. Minutes felt like hours as Catherine waited, her anxiety mounting with each passing second. She could hear muffled noises from the intruder as he rummaged through her belongings. The sound of drawers being yanked open and items by items. The fear of what he might do next was paralyzing. Eventually, the noises began to fade. Catherine held her breath, listening intently for any sign of movement. Finally, she heard the front door creak open and then slam shut. The house was eerily silent once more. Catherine waited a few more minutes before cautiously emerging from the bathroom. She moved carefully through the darkened house, her eyes scanning for any signs of the intruder's presence. When the police arrived, their flashing lights pierced the darkness, providing a much-needed sense of reassurance. The officers conducted a thorough search of the house. Catherine led them to the broken door, explaining what had happened. One of the officers took detailed notes while another examined the damage. The officer in charge turned to Catherine with a grave expression. "It looks like the intruder forced entry through this door. We'll take your statement and see if we can find any leads." As they investigated, Catherine noticed something that made her blood run cold. The intruder had left behind a few personal items, a photograph and a set of keys that looked disturbingly familiar. When the officers questioned her about the items, Catherine's face went pale. "These are David's keys. He used to keep a spare set here." The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. David, her ex-husband, had apparently returned to the house he once shared with her. It was a haunting reminder of how unresolved issues could bleed into one's sense of safety. Catherine had hoped the divorce would be a clean break, but it seemed David couldn't let go. The police managed to apprehend David later that night. He was found trying to flee in his car, still carrying items that he had stolen from the house. During questioning, David admitted he had returned to retrieve some personal belongings and confront Catherine, his anger and frustration over the divorce driving his actions. The intrusion left Catherine feeling exposed and violated. The security of her home, which she had once taken for granted, was shattered. The breach not only compromised her physical safety but also left deep emotional scars. She found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, jumping at every sound, and doubting her sense of security. In the weeks following the incident, Catherine took several measures to enhance her home's security. She had had all the locks replaced, installed security cameras, and made sure the alarm system was functioning properly. Despite these precautions, the emotional aftermath was harder to manage. She attended therapy to deal with the trauma and worked on rebuilding her confidence. Catherine's experience served as a stark reminder of how deeply home invasions can impact not only one's sense of physical security but also their emotional well-being. The violation of her personal space left her with a lingering sense of fear and distrust, altering her perception of safety and security. As time passed, Catherine slowly began to reclaim her sense of peace. She found solace in her supportive friends and family, and gradually the memories of that harrowing night became less haunting. Still, the experience remained a profound lesson in the importance of safeguarding oneself and being vigilant, especially during vulnerable times. The incident had underscored the fragile nature of security and the lasting effects of such traumatic events. Catherine learned to approach her life with a newfound awareness, always mindful of the need to protect her personal space and well-being. Story 4. Anna had just returned home from work, looking forward to a relaxing evening with her husband, Brian. They had planned to meet some friends for dinner, but as Anna unlocked the front door, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. A faint smell of tobacco and unusual shadows on the floor made her heart race with unease. As she stepped inside, she noticed that the living room was in disarray. The closet door was ajar, and its contents were scattered across the room. Panic set in as she realized that their home had been disturbed. With a growing sense of dread, Anna hurried upstairs to check the bedroom, hoping that Brian had simply forgotten to tidy up. When Anna reached the top of the stairs, she noticed that the bedroom door was slightly open. She took a deep breath and pushed it open cautiously. What she saw inside made her blood run cold. A man was sitting on the edge of their bed, seemingly unaware of her presence at first. He appeared to be someone from the neighborhood who had recently started acting strangely. The man looked up in alarm as he saw Anna standing in the doorway. His eyes widened with panic, and he quickly jumped off the bed, making a dash for the door. Without thinking, Anna grabbed her phone and dialed 911. "Hello, I need help," she said urgently. "Someone has broken into my house. They're in the bedroom right now." As she spoke, the intruder fled down the stairs and out of the house. Anna tried to give a detailed description to the dispatcher, her hands shaking as she spoke. The police arrived within minutes, their flashing lights cutting through the growing twilight. Anna led them through the house, explaining what had happened and showing them the mess in the living room. The officers began to search the area, checking for any signs of the intruder and interviewing neighbors. Unfortunately, the man had managed to escape before they arrived. The police conducted a thorough search but found no immediate evidence of the suspect's whereabouts. One of the officers spoke to Anna and Brian, who had arrived home shortly after the police. "It looks like the intruder used a key to get in," he said, looking concerned. "Do you have any idea how they might have gotten access?" Brian's face turned ashen as he realized what might have happened. "I lost a spare key a few weeks ago. I thought I'd misplaced it somewhere, but I didn't think it would be a problem." The officer nodded sympathetically. "That could explain how the intruder got in. We recommend changing all your locks immediately. Also, it might be a good idea to have a security system installed for added protection." Anna and Brian felt a wave of relief and frustration. They had never imagined that their misplaced key could lead to such an unsettling situation. They spent the evening calling locksmiths and arranging for their locks to be changed, while the police continued their investigation, hoping to catch the intruder before he struck again. The next day, Anna and Brian worked with the locksmith to replace all the locks in their home. They also decided to invest in a security system with cameras and alarms, wanting to ensure that they would be better prepared if another break-in were to occur. Despite the physical repairs and new security measures, the emotional impact of the intrusion lingered. Anna and Brian found it difficult to shake off the feeling of vulnerability. Their home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a place where their safety could be easily breached. They were constantly on edge, double-checking locks and peering out windows, their sense of security irrevocably altered. In the weeks that followed, they made a conscious effort to regain a sense of normalcy. They connected with their neighbors, informing them of the incident and asking for their vigilance. They also attended a community meeting where the local police discussed neighborhood safety and crime prevention, finding some solace in the shared concern and support from their community. The intrusion had been a stark reminder of how quickly one's sense of safety could be upended. Anna and Brian learned to appreciate their newfound security measures and the importance of being vigilant. Their experience highlighted the need for constant awareness and preparedness, even in a seemingly peaceful neighborhood. While the physical damage was repaired and the locks were changed, the memory of that night remained with them. They knew they had taken steps to protect their home, but the feeling of vulnerability lingered, serving as a constant reminder of the need to stay alert and proactive in safeguarding their space.